When you hear the word boundaries, what comes to mind? Probably something kind of harsh, right? Like putting up a big wall. But for introverts, that's not really the goal at all. Today, we're going to look at a totally different way of thinking about it, one that's all about protecting your energy, not about pushing people away.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to completely reframe what a boundary even is. Then we'll dig into why this stuff can feel so incredibly hard. We'll look at 3 practical types you can use, and I'll even give you the exact words to say. And we'll wrap up by seeing how this whole approach, believe it or not, actually builds way more trust in your relationships.
Okay, let's kick things off with what I think is the single most important idea in this whole explainer. Seriously, this one little shift in how you see things can change everything.
So instead of thinking boundaries, let's think energy agreements. See, for introverts, it's not about building walls. It's about managing a resource, your energy, that just isn't infinite. An energy agreement is just a simple way to communicate what you have the capacity for, so you can show up as your best self without totally burning out.
Now, if you're thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but it's still terrifying, I get it. That's completely and totally normal. So let's just take a second to acknowledge the very real fears that pop up when we even think about setting a limit. These feelings are so valid.
I mean, does any of this ring a bell, that deep fear of disappointing someone you really care about, or being misunderstood and seen as difficult? Or triggering a conflict when all you want is peace? That feeling of being too sensitive. And the biggest one of all, the fear of actually losing a relationship over it. These fears are exactly why we avoid doing what we know we need to do. But here's the big pivot. Here's the truth. The right kind of boundary does the exact opposite of what we're afraid of. Instead of creating distance, a gentle, clear boundary actually creates stability. It makes things predictable and, believe it or not, makes the relationship feel safer for everybody.
So, let's get practical. How do we actually do this? We're going to break it down into a simple framework with 3 different types of boundaries that you can start using, like today.
First up, time boundaries. This is all about how long you can be present and engaged. Something as simple as, I can give this about 20 minutes, is perfect. Next, energy boundaries. This is about the kind of interaction you can handle. Maybe a heavy, intense phone call is just too much. Saying text is easier for me protects your energy. And finally, access boundaries. This is all about how available you are. Can I reply tomorrow is such a great way to give yourself the space you need to process.
Okay, knowing the what is great, but the how, like what words actually come out of your mouth, that's the real challenge, right? So let's look at some super simple, gentle scripts you can literally just steal.
I love this one. I need a recharge today. It's so clean, right? It's powerful because it's about your need. You're not blaming them. You're not saying, you wore me out. You're just stating a simple fact about your own battery level. No big explanation needed.
Here's another fantastic one for setting an energy boundary. I don't have capacity for intensity right now. This is your go-to when you feel a conversation heading into really heavy territory, and you just know, deep down, you can't handle it. It's so honest, and it's kind to your own nervous system.
Ooh, this one is a game changer, especially for anyone who needs time to think before they speak. I process slowly, can I reply tomorrow? It perfectly honors your wiring. You're not blowing them off, you're actually setting you both up for a better conversation by asking for the time you need to give a thoughtful answer.
And this all boils down to one simple, powerful equation. Clarity equals kindness. I really want you to take that in. Being clear isn't mean. It's actually one of the kindest things you can do. It prevents all that confusion and resentment that builds up when needs aren't communicated.
Okay, so now for a really interesting tool. And the best part is, it doesn't require you to say a single word. Sometimes the most effective boundary is just silence.
So let me ask you this. When you get that urge to pull back, to just be quiet, what's that little voice in your head say? Does it tell you you're avoiding things? That you're being rude? I want to challenge that. What if it's not avoidance at all? What if it's just your body's incredibly smart way of regulating itself?
I really want you to hear this. You are allowed to take space. You are allowed to be quiet. You don't have to be on all the time. You don't have to perform. That silence, it isn't a failure. It's a necessary and, honestly, a sacred tool for coming back to center.
All right, let's bring this all home. Remember at the beginning, we talked about that fear that setting boundaries is going to create all this distance? Well, let's look at how this gentle, clear approach actually does the complete opposite.
Here's the beautiful paradox. Healthy people in your life, they appreciate clarity. It takes the guesswork out of the relationship. When they know what to expect from you, it reduces confusion, which builds trust. And that trust makes the entire relationship feel more stable and secure for everyone. You're no longer a mystery they have to solve. You're just a person with clear, understandable needs.
So I'll just leave you with this to think about. What if your boundaries weren't walls to keep people out? What if they were actually the very foundation you build to make your relationships more stable, more honest, and in the end, so much closer?
So if anything we talked about today made something inside you just soften a little bit, hold on to that feeling. Our next explainer talks about how to tell if your support system is really working for you. You can move on to that whenever it feels right. And if you're looking for private tools to practice these skills, Life Skills TTP offers some really gentle, self-paced guides that go perfectly with this kind of work.